Hey, David Wells with ProAudioDVDs.com here. It's another Friday video. Instead of going to a technical direction here, I'd go into another direction which has really helped me. I'm reading a book at the moment called Mindset that's talking about people with fixed mindsets and people with growth mindsets, people who want to keep on learning. And I wanted to share something. I was thinking about this the other day, of lessons that I've learned, and particularly painful lessons that I've learned. And what I've learned about learning is that the more painful the lesson is, the more it sticks with you forever. So don't ever be afraid of learning a very painful lesson. I was thinking about this is probably 25, actually it would be 25 years ago, because I just started working with Whitney Houston. We were down in Miami, Florida, getting ready for a world tour down there. And so we're in a rehearsal studios, long days, probably 12-hour days in a rehearsal studio down there. And I had designed a particular rack for doing electronic drums. So Ricky Lawson, a dear friend of mine who passed away a number of years ago, was the drummer. He had acoustic triggers, electronic triggers on his acoustic drums that would drive a couple of Akai S1000s. If you can remember those, this is back in the days when you had samplers and you didn't, anything we did on that you could probably do on your iPhone right now. Anyway, so I designed this rack, and I was very meticulous with when I would design racks. All the cables would be channeled, in these very neat channels, and it would, you could eat lunch off the back of this rack. It was so, nicely designed. But there was a hum in this rack, and I could not get rid of it. And so you did, the normal things you do. You start isolating all the various pieces of hardware in the rack, by putting plastic sleeves in the rack screws, starting to isolate each piece so that the grounds weren't touching each other. I spent, and I was a rookie. I mean, I just, starting out. So I'm thinking ground loop. That's the whole thing I'm thinking there. It sounds like a 60 cycle hum. I'm going to go for that. And every day after rehearsal, when everybody else could go back to the hotel, and we were staying at an absolutely beautiful hotel. We were down there. Whitney was shooting the Bodyguard with Kevin Costner, so we're in this just magnificent hotel. So when you finished your gig, you'd go back to the hotel, and there's this crazy beautiful pool, and you had per diem to spend, and it was like, so after the long day of rehearsing, it was great to go back to the pool. I couldn't go back to the pool for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 days. I was trying to hunt down this thing, because I knew every day that we came back, I'd have to listen to this hum, and I'd be like, where is this hum coming from? Anyway, long story short, because I had set the rack up to just be so, really nice. There was no power supplies just dangling around the place. I think I had an Alesis MIDI verb back in those days in there, and it was one of those audio devices that had, if here's the rack, then a cable that goes along to a transformer which then has a long cable that goes into the AC outlet. And so there's this big transformer that's in the middle of the line, and so I'm neatening all this up with shrink wrap and and just making it all beautiful. But this little transformer I had velcroed right over the output section of the sampler. And I'd done everything else that week to pull that rack apart. But every time I'd put it back together, I'd just Velcro this thing right on top of the output section of the S1000. And of course, there was inductance, going on, right there. And that was what was causing the hum. You pulled that Velcro off, and it went like this. So I'm like, I've just lost a week of hanging out with my friends by the pool, having a few beers and enjoying my time off, because I didn't know that this transformer was gonna make that hum. And so from now on, did I learn that lesson? Yeah. I mean, if someone had come up to me and said, dude, knucklehead, your transformer is sitting right in the output section, move it away and you'll be fine. That would have fixed it up and I could have hung out with my mates. But I wouldn't have learned that lesson. It was so painful because, for a week I basically didn't have any time off, and I was just really trying to nut this out. In fact, it also happened on my a guitar amp that I built. Stay right here. I'll grab it. Okay, here it is. Last year, I produced a training course called the Ultimate Guitar Tone School. And in the middle of that, I thought it'd be really good to learn how to build a tube amp. So I built this tube amp off a design from my brother, who runs a website called valveheaven.com in Australia. And it's made up of, a handful of resistors and capacitors and these valve sockets. And basically, when I built this all together, I went down to Australia to visit my brother, and I was having a hum there as well. But because I didn't know, it was more like paint by numbers. It was like, okay, put pin 5 of this on, a resistor that goes over to a star ground, all this kind of stuff. So when it didn't sound as good as I knew it'd sound, I took it down to Australia and hung out with my brother, and guess what? It was the same sort of thing. This transformer was interacting with these 2 transformers. I think this one fires up the heaters on the valves, and these are the output. I think that's the output transformer. Anyway, he knows more about that than I did. I just put it together. But you know what? It was the orientation of this, when it was 90 degrees that way, that was inducing a hum, and it sounded horrible. So here's what we did. We unscrewed these, pulled them out, and then just 90 degrees it, and it fixed itself up. Anyway, that's a long way to go to make a point there. My point isn't so much about conductance and transformers and hums and things like that. It is that if you are coming across a problem that you just can't fix, maybe there's something in your studio that's just really, really bugging you. You're getting some sort of distortion or something like that through your signal chain, and you just, or there's some sort of hiss or hum or something like that. Don't be afraid if it takes you a week or a couple of weeks to work it out, because here's what I've learned. The harder the lesson, the more it'll stick in your noggin. And that was a very early lesson that I learned back on that tour. That was probably the beginning of my professional life. I got lucky, man. My first professional gig was with Whitney. Many years ago. That would be 25 years ago, because my birthday's next week. I'll be 55. I can finally have the early bird special at Denny's as a senior, I remember I was 30 on that part. In fact, I remember Whitney sang me happy birthday, which is a pretty cool thing to have in your birthday. But I've remembered that lesson. And if you like, why don't you pop down in the comments and pass on some lessons that you've learned as you've gone along, and hopefully they're things that have really, really stuck with you. Anyway, that's this week. I'll speak to you next week, and make it a great weekend. Ciao for now.